All right, awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay. It's 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I never can keep it straight. Welcome everybody to Brivia's June webinar, and hello to Brenda Badyuk, COO of Brivia, who's in the background helping us out today. A good friend of ours. I want everybody to say hello in the chat. We love using the chat. We love to ask people, where are you tuning in from? I'm in Winnipeg today. Tim, where are you dialing in from today?
Just outside of Ottawa.
Just outside of Ottawa. Awesome. And Jean, what about you? Where are you today?
I'm in Hamilton.
You're in Hamilton. Great, great. And as we usually do at Brivia, is try to get people involved as much as possible to fill in the chat, to make comments, to be involved in some way. And what we like to do is sometimes we see full conversations happening in the chat. So what we're going to do is welcome everybody. We are joined by Tim Pychyl, good friend and esteemed colleague, and Jean Clinton, who I will introduce right away and then open up this conversation that I'm super excited. I've got notes today so that I use our 1 hour together as efficient as possible. So today we're talking about the three great states. And these are the first three dimensions of what I refer to as the core algorithm, which is a new model for elevating human potential, performance, and resilience with everyone kind of at work, in life, for everybody. And today we've welcomed leaders, teachers, parents, caregivers, coaches. And today's session will be recorded. So for those of you that are here, I know some people want to take notes. You will have it sent to you, and those who are registered will be able to have it as well, so that you can go back over, listen to it, view it if you like. So welcome everybody. I am going to tell you what you can expect in our time together. I want to give Tim and Jean as much room, as much space as possible to have this great conversation today. This is what you can expect. I'm going to introduce Tim and Jean, and I'm going to ask them to share what they're hoping in our time together. Then we're going to jump into a quick reflection on your greatest experience ever. And if you've been with us before at Brivia, I like to say, I want you to be the research. I want you to use your story, your perspectives as the expert here. Then I'm going to jump into the three great states and what they are, why they're so important, and open up a conversation with Tim and Jean from their perspectives. And then we're just going to have a conversation about some of the practical strategies, the implications, and really, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to talk to Tim and Jean. We talk quite often, and I'm looking forward to inviting you all into that conversation. Throughout the conversation, we're going to get to practical strategies that work for different settings. And then we're going to have some closing remarks from Jean and Tim. Often we try to get as many questions and answers in most Brivia webinars. Today, I'm going to ask people if they have questions to place them into the Q&A area. We're going to try to get to some of them. If we don't, understand that this is just the beginning of many conversations going forward. So we're going to try to answer the questions, and then we're definitely going to log them and try to swing back to them. So I want to introduce Jean and Tim. But before I do that, I have a little surprise that I didn't even tell them about. Before we even get started, I want people that are here, if you came as a leader, if you came as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a social worker, I want you to take a moment and with a pen, write down in a few words, what do you want for the people you're responsible for? So I want to anchor this. We're going to come back to this later, but if you have a pen or a piece of paper, you do not have to share this in the chat. If you're a parent, I want you to think about, what do you want for your children now or in the future? What do you, surprised Tim, I think he's looking for a pen. What do you hope, if you're a teacher, what do you want now for your students or for them now or in the future? If you're a leader, what do you want for the people that you're responsible for right now and in the future? Some people say things like, we want them to be successful. We want them to grow. We want them to show up fully, be themselves, right? Be their best person. So I just want to anchor before we even get started, because this is beyond the why. This is what you want for the people you're responsible for. We're going to come back to that. So thank you for those of you who are here. I want to introduce Dr. Jean Clinton and Tim Pychyl. Now, I've never done this before. This is a first for me. I'm actually going to read their bios so that I can stick to the script. I know, Jean, you mark the calendar. So here we go. I want to introduce Jean, and I'm going to ask her what she's hoping for in our time together today. Then I'm going to introduce Tim and ask what he's hoping for in our time together today. And then we're going to open up this awesome conversation. Jean is a great friend of mine. Dr. Jean Clinton is a clinical professor, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neuroscience at McMaster Division of Child Psychiatry. She is on staff at McMaster Children's Hospital with cross appointments in pediatrics and family medicine and an associate in the Department of Child Psychiatry, University of Toronto, and Sick Children's Hospital. She is a fellow, the Child Trauma Academy, as well as the 0 to 3 Academy Fellow since 2013. She has been a consultant to children, youth mental health programs, child welfare, and primary care for over 30 years. Dr. Jean Clinton was appointed as an education advisor to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Education. Jean believes that all children are our children. That's one of the first things I heard her say, and I love her for it. She's a knowledge translator, which means she takes knowledge from all types of disciplines and practice approaches so that she can better help the people she's responsible for. She is a renowned national and international speaker and advocate for children's issues, and she wrote an amazing book, which I'm going to share at the end today, Love Builds Brains, which is already a bestseller. I totally recommend it. Jean, that's my good friend and esteemed colleague, Dr. Jean Clinton. Jean, what are you hoping for? Welcome. And what are you hoping for in our time together today?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, my friend, to be a participant in this. So, what I hope for personally is that through our conversation, people can glean just how important and how transformative it has been for me to understand the three great states, to think about this and communicate it. So for me, I'd love that to be done for everyone who's attending here and who'll listen later. I hope that they reflect deeply on how is it in their work that they make sure that their people are safe. We'll go into more of.
Oh, you can say it's okay.
It's all right. Anyway,
Jean, I love it.
That's my intention for
Okay,
here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jean, so much. I cannot wait to hear more from you. And welcome, Tim Pychyl, good friend and esteemed colleague. Tim Pychyl, PhD, is a psychology professor, retired, very important, whose research focuses on understanding why we can become our own worst enemy through procrastination. In addition to journal publications and co-edited scholarly books, including Procrastination, Health and Well-Being, and Counseling the Procrastinator in Academic Settings, Tim wrote the brief and accessible Solving the Procrastination Puzzle, a concise guide to strategies to change. It's an amazing book. I know, Tim, I'm going to dial back how much I love you and your work. Tim is an award-winning teacher. He has shared his passion for learning through his I Procrastinate podcast and blog on Psychology Today. Tim has created a short series of for Sam Harris is a brilliant podcaster and leader in the meditation and well-being area in the Waking Up app. It provides the most up-to-date, concise summary of why we procrastinate, as well as evidence-based strategies for change. And I'm going to totally recommend Tim's book is concise. It's awesome. And the Waking Up app, I had the privilege of listening to it. It's now available for, the app is available for 30 days free. Tim, you probably give the greatest, most succinct overview of procrastination that is so relatable. I encourage everybody to, and I'll tell you where you can learn more about Tim. Tim, welcome. Thank you for being here. What are you hoping for in our time together?
Well, Steve, I got to tell you, I'm like a plant for you this morning because my wife said to me, "So what are you doing again at noon today?" Because I'm always doing some sort of talk. I said, "Well, I'm not talking about procrastination necessarily. I'm
Yeah.
talking with Steve about the three great states." She said, "What are those?" And I told her,
Yeah.
and I won't, like Gene, I won't steal the thunder here. She said, and I quote exactly, "That's brilliant. That's exactly what we need in my workplace."
Oh
So I
my
thought,
goodness.
oh, exactly. That's what I said. Oh my goodness. And because it was just so transparently important. What do I hope from us today? Whenever we get people together, there's always the same hope, and that is we learn from each other, right? That's
Right.
why we come face to face. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for being here. Tim and Jean are good friends of mine, and Brenda is in the backdrop today. She's also a lovely little group I call the Core Council. Really great friends, smart people, SMHEART, big brains, big hearts. So if I refer to that, and thank you for being here, giving us your time, your energy, and your heads and your hearts. So let's jump into what we're here to do. And I always like to go straight to a reflection. It's one of my favorite things to do. Now you get a choice. I want people here, if you've been here with Privia, you know me, you know I like to start with the greatest experiences ever. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to reflect on something important. I want you to take a moment to think about your greatest. You can choose either a great leader or a great team. It's up to you, wherever your head and your heart goes. If you pick, I want you to go to a greatest experience where you would say you were either under a great leader, right? A manager, a director, an executive, whatever it is, a supervisor, or you were in a team, on a team that you would say was the greatest, where you felt the best, where you did the best. I want you to just go back to a time when you can connect within your heart or your head about that greatest experience ever. And I like to give people the opportunity to think about that, that maybe it's that leader where they were supportive and respectful or knowledgeable, or they had your back. These are some of the things that we hear, right? So it might be a great team where people were working on shared goals or living the values, or, working and having fun and being optimistic. Whatever you go to, whether it's a great leader or a great team, I want you to connect with that. Most importantly, what I want you to connect with is, what were the things that were happening that made it so great? So I want you to connect with whether it's qualities or ingredients or behaviors. But when you think about that time that you're going to in your head or your heart right now, what could you identify as the qualities that you would say, that's it? Like, that's what made it so great. Like, that person did this, or the environment was like this. So I want you to think about that. Now, if you already have it, you can put it in the chat. Feel free to throw your answers in the chat. I'm going to ask Tim, and this is how we're going to open up the conversation, is I want to know, where did Tim go? Where did Jean go? And if you want to share in the chat, I would love to see you put in the chat, what were the things that made your experience so great that you would say it was the greatest ever? Okay, so I'm going to ask, I don't know who wants to go first, Jean or Tim. I want to ask, did you go somewhere right away? Did you have to like think really hard? Because the sad thing is sometimes people go, I have a hard time thinking about a great leader or a great team, which just makes me sad. But where did you go? Can I ask you, Tim, where did you go in the reflection?
Well, I immediately went to the same place when you asked earlier about what do you want for your employees or the people that work for you. And I wrote down the first word and I realized, no, that's the only word I want to use because it captures so much, and that's engaged. So when
Okay.
I've been in situations where everyone's engaged, so I spent all those years on the university campus teaching, when the class was engaged, when I
Right.
was engaged, when I showed up,
Yeah.
then magic happened. And
Okay.
so when that was crucial for me, that
Yeah.
deep engagement. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Tim, if you can identify one or two of the qualities that led to people being engaged?
Well, I
If you
kind
could
of
grab
went
those.
past it quickly there, and that is I showed up.
Okay.
And because I was a teacher, when I showed up, it modeled, at the very least, it modeled for people, but it also gave permissions for other people to show up, to be
Right.
their whole selves.
Right.
So as a concrete example, I would get to class, particularly if there was never a class before my own, 10 or 15 minutes at least early, and I'd sit
Yeah.
at the back in large theaters and I'd go from seat to seat and just talk with people
Yeah.
and see where they're at.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was the fact that I was there to be with those other people,
Yeah.
and that was
Wow.
crucial. There was
Awesome.
I guess the other word we can use for it, it was authentic.
Okay.
It
It
was
was authentic.
authentically there. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. I don't know if you, I'm looking at the chat as well, and there's so many great things in there, like connection and support and feeling valued, and a bunch of some things that cross over with what you just said too, Tim. So thank you for that. Jean, I'd love to hear, where did you go in your heart or your head? Leader, a team? What can you share with us about your greatest experience?
Well, do you know what? The very first thing I go to is the birth of my kids. You know,
Oh.
as you know, I have five, and I
Mhm.
remember so well the very first experience. But so that's where I go to right away as a mum.
Yeah.
But I think one of the greatest moments for me was when I was doing a keynote presentation for a group that I feel a part of. It's like
Okay.
It's like I found my peeps. I found
Okay.
my
Yeah.
people, and it was talking about deep learning, and
Okay.
so I got a standing ovation, which you kind of blah 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 blah. But what that meant was, one, the team who organized it
Yeah.
trusted me to do the
Yeah.
keynote.
Yeah.
I felt
Okay.
I felt
Wow.
safe about it.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and all of the three great states, like, I'm thinking, um, but also the fact that the communication, like Tim said, that they were engaged. They
Yeah.
got they got it.
Wow. I love it.
And it made me feel good
Yeah.
that I had given them something that could direct them in terms of their purpose.
Wow. What a segue. I can hear Jean. Jean has been speaking about the three great states for quite a while. I know she lives and breathes it, so I can hear it, but I love what you're saying. You felt trusted, you felt valued. Right, and you
Mhm.
had clear purpose and clear direction, and I like what in the chat, it's awesome, supportive. We're also hearing not only the qualities like being valued, being clear, having direction, roles and responsibilities. That we see the importance of relationships come out, but I love what Tim said too. It can be authentic. You can show up and be yourself. And Gene, what you said, like, yeah, it's like it feels, you did this with your hands, like it's indescribable sometimes, right? The experience that we get. So let's get into what's happening. And what I love about, here we go, Gene, and you're not going to spoil anything, but what we're going to do is, I love hearing people talk about their greatest moments, because they say things like, I was inspired, I was motivated, like, you hear all of the good stuff. And one of the things that I love about those experiences, it takes us to the very first set of dimensions in the core algorithm, which are the three great states, which is what we're here to do. When we are at our best, we're experiencing the three great states, and I'm going to get into them. And the very first one is safe. And I'm going to put all three of them up because they're so important, and you already know these to be true. Like, we're just giving words to something that you already know to be true. And there's three of them. The three great states are safe, significant, and situated. Now, safety, you've heard of psychological safety. I love the work of Amy Edmondson. The three great states goes just a little bit beyond that, but we can start at safety. Safety means I feel psychologically safe. I feel socially safe. I feel emotionally safe. I feel mentally safe. And even I feel spiritually safe. Like, in this moment, in the relationship or the environment, I feel safe. Now, safe is also about comfort. It's about trust. We heard the words come. We see them all tons in the chat, right? It's really, safety is about that sense of comfort and that sense of, I'm going to be okay. Now, the other thing that's neat is, well, let's move on to significant. Well, what does significant mean? Significant is about feeling valued. Significant is about feeling that you're valued, not only as a contributor, but as an employee, or as a part of the family, or as a part of the team, but you feel that you matter as a human being. You also feel that your contributions matter, right? And I know, Tim, you're a big fan of mattering, right? And that's what this significant is about feeling valued and valuable. It's also, though, goes a little bit beyond that, about feeling connection, feeling that sense. Gene, you talked about that sense of belonging, right? You felt like these were your peeps. So the connection is strong, the belonging is strong. Let's go move to situated. Gene, you said it, you did it with your hands. I love when people talk about, and Tim is a very structured kind of direction guy, and I love when people talk about it and they do this with their hands, right? And Gene, you did that. You're like, where are you going? And situated is exactly that. It's like, I know where I'm going. I know what's expected of me. I know what's expected of you. It really is about purpose and direction, but it doesn't have to be big P purpose, like find your purpose, right? There could be some pressure. It could be like, what am I doing next week? What's in the calendar? Like, what do I have to look forward to? And here's the cool thing about the three great states. And when you look back to the people's reflections, when you reflect on your own, you can identify there were things that were happening that created a sense of safety. There were things that happened where you felt valued and valuable, that you mattered, Gene, right? And I see this in the chat as well. And you definitely, Gene, you had direction, you were clear, right? No surprises. And so what I've learned in my work from foster kids and gang members all the way up to F-35 pilots and surgeons, is that human beings, when we experience the three great states in two places, in our relationships and in the environments that we spend the most time, we are unstoppable. We perform optimally, we function optimally. People report feeling and doing their absolute best. And that's right now, I want to open it up to my beautiful friends here. I'd love to see in the chat, what do people think of this? How are they connecting with it? And Tim, I'm going to go to Jean first this time. Jean, there's the three great states. What are your thoughts on these concepts of safe, significant, situated, and the impact they can have on us as humans?
Well, Steve, as you know and said, I'm a child psychiatrist, and as I look at the mental health crisis today for kids, I have a passionate drive. We're never going to treat ourselves out of this. We have to do prevention
Right.
and promotion of well-being. And I find that these three concepts are the core things to focus on and building the, you can't learn if you're not safe. Create that classroom, which is a community rather than a following only the what's written. You feel significant. The kids feel significant. They're listened to. Their voice is appreciated, and they're situated. They know why they're in learning what they're learning and how what they're learning is significant for them, but also gives them a sense of direction.
Right.
So in education, where I spend a lot of my time now trying to prevent problems, these concepts need to be core. They need to be core.
Wow.
You can't do it. You can't do it
Right. Wow.
without this. And when kids have this, and when educators have this, they soar. We see flourishing. We see things from kids that people say, oh, I had no idea that they knew this or could do this.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow, Jean, right out of the gates, pretty profound. I see in the chat, people like what you're saying. Wow, bam. Tim, I see you smiling. And Jean, jump in at any point, okay? I want you both to take up as much space as possible. Tim, what are your thoughts right out of the gates about the three great states?
Well, I really like how Jean began by situating it where she lives, right? She's a child psychiatrist. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to say, well, you introduced me as my expertise is in procrastination. But the reason I developed that expertise is because my research led me to, I was trying to understand people's well-being.
Right.
And what predicted people's well-being was not doing what they said they were going to do. And if I knew you had a lot of projects that you said you were going to do and you didn't do, the difficult conversation with an employee or a colleague, a task that was never ending, I knew where your well-being was, and it was in the toilet. So that word that I used earlier about engagement, the flip side of it is this magic word for me, that procrastination, because it's a lack of engagement. Now, so many people quickly jump to the idea, well, but isn't procrastination just a time management thing? And the answer is no. In fact, it connects so strongly to these three great states. And this is where I stand on Jean's shoulders and say, yeah, these are foundational. Like if you don't feel safe, you're not going to take any risks to do the things that are at the edge of what you're feeling that you're capable of. If you don't feel like you matter or the task matters, you're not going to engage. And of course, without that feeling situated, without purpose, you're not going to move forward. And it's not a trivial thing not to move forward. It is the predictor of our overall well-being. It is actually engaging in life itself. So for me too, I want to echo what Jean said, as these have to be seen as the foundation. And from these things, we derive many other things that we have studied.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. Jean, go ahead. Thank you, Tim.
Well, that's, I mean, that's so fantastic, Tim. And what is coming to my mind is we know that we need more creativity for some of the complex VUCA challenges that we have. But when you feel safe, significant, and situated, then you're able to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get pounded for it.
Yeah. And I think, keep going, Jean.
No. That's what that's the kind of riff that came to my mind as Tim was talking. When you're safe, creativity can happen. When you feel that significance, that you're valued, that you belong,
Yeah.
You can co-create
Yeah.
with others. Anyway, so
Yeah. No, no. I
And
just, yeah.
psychologically, the mechanism there in some ways is that if I don't feel safe, what happens? And people that are listening right now could think, what happens? What do you experience emotionally when you don't feel safe? Anxiety, fear,
Yeah.
uncertainty, frustration, resentment. These are negative emotions we don't want in our body. So what do we do to get rid of those negative emotions? We avoid, right? We avoid the situation. And when you're focused on surviving and avoiding, you're not creative, you're not engaging. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
profound.
Well, we're going to talk about what happens when the three great states are compromised, and it's a great lead in. One of the things, thanks, Tim, so much. And I love that I love that you both are drawing parallels and speaking to the things that you are authorities in, and that you know really well. Just coming back to the three great states, because we do, and it's true. I can feel safe, but I may not feel valued. Right. See, this is how it works, right? I can feel valued, but I may not know where I'm going next. So it causes me to hesitate or stutter step, right? And they all are very important, especially for us as human beings, to be able to take risks of the right kind of risk, to be able to be creative, to tune into who we really are, what we want, what's important to us. Now, to give some people who are out there practical, because at Brivia we do simple, practical, actionable, right? Safe can be things as saying thank you, using people's names, giving them the right kind of space, making sure the environment that they're comfortable before you get to business. Ask them how they're doing before you get to the agenda. Right? Significant is really recognizing, saying thank you more often. I use people's names because if somebody gave you that name and you introduce it, it's very important to you. And I want you to feel significant, right? Remembering things that are important to people. Doing a check-in before business. Like sometimes we just go to business first, and it really gives a sense that what's most important here? Situated. Tim, you're going to love this. Having a schedule, right? Sorry. Having an agenda at the meeting. How many times have we been in a meeting where we're like, what are we here for? Right? So we go into many situations where we're not safe, we're not significant, we're not situated. And this brings me to what happens when we are. This is it. Tim, Jean, we've asked over 10,000 people, how are you feeling when you feel the three great states? And these are the four things they describe unequivocally, consistently, that they are feeling high energy, sharp focus, solid commitment, whether it's enthusiastic or engaged or dialed in. But this is what's really important, and I want to go to this. Tim, you touched on it, and Jean, you touched on it as well. And most people are here because they are parents, teachers, coaches, leaders. And I'll tell you something. When we're not feeling the three great states, we do one of four things. And all of you, I'm just going to do a quick test on this. You be the research. One of the things that we do when we're not feeling safe, we hold back or we hide. Right? When we're not feeling safe, if I'm not feeling situated, ever been to a building and no one says where you have to go, and it takes twice as much time to get there, or you're not certain, right? So it's even a matter of efficiency. But when we're not feeling safe or we're not feeling like we matter, we slow down. And sometimes we shut down. But as humans, we're really good fakers. Like if I'm not feeling valued and Jean asks me how I'm doing, I can say, great, thanks, Jean. How are you? Right? But really what I'm holding back, and here's what I want to put out there. I want you to remember this. Tim, you're going to remember this. Jean, you're going to remember this. Kara, you're going to remember. Terry, everybody online, thank you for being here today. Remember this moment. Remember that time you were really passionate about something. You had those ideas and that position, that opinion. You were so excited about that one thing, and somebody asked you if you had an opinion on it, and you said no. Somebody asked you, what do you think about this? And you said, I don't have any thoughts on that. Do you remember that time? Do you remember that time that you held back, Jean? Do you remember that time that you held back, Tim, in that moment when you did have something really important to say, but you chose not to say it? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we can use the three great states. So everybody here has had that experience. And maybe let's start with safety. Maybe you didn't say what you had to say because you weren't feeling comfortable. You didn't maybe trust the situation or the person or the experience yet. Okay, maybe you held back or you hid it because you weren't feeling safe. Maybe it wasn't that. Let's move on to significant. Maybe you didn't share what you had to share because you didn't think it was going to be valued or valuable. Maybe you didn't share because worse, you thought it was going to be judged or criticized, so you held it back. Let's go to situated. Maybe it wasn't. Let's go to maybe situated. Well, maybe you didn't know what was going to happen next. You couldn't predict what the response was going to be, or maybe you didn't even know where was this going to go after I share it. Who's going to hear this? what's going to happen next? So the thing I want to just share and emphasize and put it back to Tim and Jean, the three great states are amazing because they open us up. But when they're compromised, even just a little bit, we hide, we hold back, we slow down, we shut down. And what blows me away, Tim and Jean, is not only is that the create conditions for learning, creativity, all that stuff, but in that moment, we are hiding back our potential, and we may be hiding the most incredible thing that we've ever said, ever, in that moment. So I'm going to put it back. Tim, Jean, what are your thoughts on this idea of us hiding or holding back when the three great states are compromised? Any impact that may have?
I really like what Terry Lynn wrote here. I remember holding back with regret. I mean, that just added to, when you hold back later on, what is that emotion that runs through you? But that regret that you didn't, what's the word I used earlier? Engage, right? You saw the opportunity, but you held back. Why? Because you didn't feel safe. You didn't feel situated. You didn't feel significant, right? And so it's powerful. In fact, I remember attending a conference on bereavement and counseling those who are bereaving. And people talked about regret, clinicians who work all the time with folks like this. And I pushed a little bit, saying, what were the regrets? And it's the things we said we were going to do and never did, right?
Wow.
And so there's that magic of, it's not just a matter of a few all-nighters, it's procrastinating on the things that make your life up itself, and it leads to huge regret. And it can be as something as profound as losing a loved one, but it's losing opportunity. It's not speaking up, to use the example you started with, when you had something to say. So thanks so much for that with the regret there, Terry Lynn.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Jean, what are your thoughts on this idea of when the three great states aren't there, we hide or hold back, or it impacts us negatively?
Oh yeah, no. I'm an avoidance perfection poster. So my thing is avoiding, for sure, because the risk is too great.
Yeah.
The risk is too great. The possibility of regret is huge, and I might feel diminished. So I don't take the risk. But I want to bring up another point, because a situation came to mind as Tim was talking. When you, and I have a situation, when you take a risk in a group that is not necessarily your peeps, not there for you, who are powerful, and when you take that risk and you get frickin' shut down, how do you keep going? And I can say that happened to me, absolutely huge impact. But I had a group of people who were as passionate about this. This is the context for me, as early child development.
Yeah.
And with the fact that I had that group where I felt safe, where I felt significant, and I felt situated, over time, I was able to say, I won't say it, but F you. So the idea of failure, significant, but buffered.
Yeah.
Buffered by your people.
Yeah.
Who make you feel and experience the three great states. That's what's in my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's your environment, right? That's your cocoon, isn't it, Jean? That's the place where you go. And this is the great news about the three great states for parents, teachers, leaders, coaches, doctors, professors, is that we can control them within our relationships. This is the good news. And we can influence them in our environments. And Jean, this is what makes me excited but sad, is that if you had the three great states in that environment, you wouldn't have to run to find these other places. You wouldn't have to say F you to this group. And I think what's really important is that when we see people slowing down or shutting down, we often have a negative attribution, right? Tim, I often hear like, well, what's wrong with her? And Jean, we have this awesome question we both share, which is, don't ask what's wrong, ask what's going on. And what I've learned is when I see people slowing down, shutting down, hiding or holding back, the question I have is which one of the three great states might be compromised?
Mhm.
right? What if it impacts our behavior this much? And as humans, we know this before I start blaming and gaming and shaming, right? Which one of these? And then I realized, and this was a game changer, I started to realize, oh, I didn't have an agenda, or I didn't tell people when lunch was coming, or like really small things, but like a ton of feathers, which are cute and tickly, a ton is still a ton. And when it's compromised, yeah. So just any thoughts on that, Tim? Any more thoughts on whether it's, the positive aspects of the three great states, maybe even how you see it overlapping with more of your work or just well-being, anything?
Well, I certainly see it overlapping with well-being, and I'm kind of caught up now with the webinar chat here
The
too,
chat. Well, that's
because
good. I'm glad that you are. Yeah, go ahead.
when we were talking about getting together to do this event, I was sharing with you an interaction with my teenage daughter and how the three great states became foundational to how I wanted to interact with her. And Michael has just written here, teenagers are kind of brilliant sometimes, but it's tricky to get these three lined up for them to share.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought, oh yeah, it's really, really well said. And it's even tricky sometimes to know which is the one that needs to be addressed,
yeah,
right? And safety is of the three, I often put safety first, but it's not necessarily always the key player. And so I would love to hear Jean's thoughts, particularly because I've raised the issue of teens through Michael. But I know that for me, when I was talking with my wife about our reaction to our daughter, I said, we really have to watch we're not undermining her safety. Right.
right.
And
Yeah,
and we talked about authoritarian parenting, for example, which I think
yeah,
many people listening will be familiar with. You get that immediate demand for control, but lacking warmth, and it
yeah,
undermines feeling safe, right?
yeah.
And so because the significant for me in my relationship with my daughter, it often is a longer term thing. Like
Yeah.
she feels she matters because for years we've demonstrated that. Like there could
Hmm.
be moments, and this is kind of like that state and trait debate. There can be
Yeah.
moments of a state where she feels like I don't matter that much right now, but over time that trait of significance is there. But
Yeah.
safety, I find, can be undermined so quickly
Yeah.
uh, between people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I really appreciate Michael's comment there, and that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to riff on for a moment, and then throw it over to Jean because
Yeah.
Mhm.
kids are her
Yeah.
expertise. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. Jean, please.
Yeah. Oh, so fantastic, Tim. What um what comes to my mind is that if before adolescence hits, and adolescence is from like 9 to 28, because the brain literally is under construction, the frontal cortex is working. But my experience, and I'll talk from personal experience, is that if you have a home or a group that is supportive of your teens, if they feel safe, significant, and situated, when they blow it big time, they can come home to that harbor and know that they are not going to be judged by that. And I have with having 5 kids, I'll tell you that I've learned more about the teenage brain than I ever wanted to know. So if you have a child, hypothetically, who happens to get involved in some kind of shite, and you're at the door with the police with your child in handcuffs, so freaking drunk, they have no idea what's going on.
Mhm. Yeah.
My experience is that experience is enough of a consequence. So what
Yeah.
I want to work on as a parent is creating the safe conditions so that even though that's a major screw up,
Yeah.
you still feel that there's a harbor at home. And I can
Yeah.
say that that
Yeah.
child that I'm speaking about is
Yeah.
very successful in the medical field.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
And
that's what
yeah,
came to mind.
huge, no, huge, Gene, and Tim as well. I think let's put that in the context of all humans. when we screw up, this is the thing, right? And I talk to thousands of foster parents, thousands of corrections officers. We need to have a safe, significant, situated welcoming.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them stay in dangerous situations because they're afraid to come home. They're afraid to come back to work. They're afraid to come to the environment where the three great states might be compromised, right? And it is hard. And Tim, I want to come back a couple of things because I want practical things. Let's just cut to it. I know it can be difficult for all parents out there or leaders out there. Safety, yes, is one thing. It might be difficult, but significance is like, I want you to know that you matter, Tim. I don't want there to be any question that you matter to me. And I want to know how I can do that as a friend, as a colleague, right? Jean, I want you to be situated, right? I want you to be clear. And as parents and leaders, I know it can be difficult to ask somebody because we don't all have the skills, but we can take the guesswork out by saying, I want you to matter. And I want to know how I can help you feel that you matter. I want you to be clear. I want you to have direction. And if you're ever unclear, let me, like, creating that pathway, and we can get to it quickly. Let them give us our currency. Now, this is only one part of the algorithm. I'm trying to hold back on the core four, of course, Tim, like,
Yeah.
right? But we'll get
I
to
hear
that,
Leave them
everybody.
alone.
Yeah. This is the three great sites. Now, the other thing, Jean, you brought up about the vulnerability, and this is important for organizations. It's important for households, for parents and leaders especially. Often when people screw up, what unfortunately what happens, if you think of all of the terminology around discipline, turn up the heat, tighten the screws, give them some rope, it's all violent. But the truth is, when we screw up, we're more vulnerable. And often what happens is the three great states go down. People start avoiding each other. People start like being more direct and harsh with each other when the opposite is true. It's when we're the most vulnerable that we need the three great states more than ever. And unfortunately, organizations and parents unintentionally and unfortunately use an approach that compromises the three great states, which doesn't make things better. Any thoughts on that, Tim? Any thoughts on that, Jean?
Oh, so many. Yeah, what comes to mind first, the word is compassion.
Yeah.
And following on the heels of that is common humanity. So as I listened to Jean's story about your drunk teen in handcuffs on the doorstep with the police, yeah, that's enough of a consequence. And we have to be able to see ourselves in that person's shoes and realize, yeah, we've all been there. And that it's common humanity and compassion for that person's feelings. But I think that what can get in the way, and I think it's really always important to talk about what gets in the way. This is a little bit of a detour, but I want to explain it. I did my doctoral research on doctoral students. And interestingly, that group isn't studied very much. And there was a book written by, I think it was the president of Harvard and Princeton at the time, called In Pursuit of the PhD. And they began the book by saying that perhaps not many people have studied the doctoral life because no one wants to go back to the horrors of the doctoral life.
No.
And I think that, and that's the detour. And the reflection is that I think sometimes that when we see others in crisis, when they are most vulnerable, if we haven't really dealt with that well ourselves, it is tough to be compassionate because we haven't been compassionate with ourselves.
Yeah.
And what we do is we act out on the other in a way that we've internalized that dialogue with ourselves.
Yeah.
And it tells us that it's hard to create places of safety for other people if we haven't learned how to do that for ourselves. If that internal dialogue gets externalized, we undermine our families, our coworkers, and of course, we've already done it to ourselves. So that's my reaction to all of that. And in fact, I was reading Gregory's comments, and I would agree, Gregory, that we see it in relation to other groups too. That neurodivergence that's not understood can feel very unsafe. So I'm hearing you, Gregory, when you're writing these things. Yeah.
Thank you, Gregory. Thank you, Tim. Jean, I see you smiling.
Wow. Tim, compassion, putting ourselves in the shoes of the other and acting on it. That's what I'm hearing, that we have such a huge absence of putting ourselves in the shoes of the other. Some people, for example, may have grounded, done done what I call moving away. It is separation-based discipline.
Yeah.
But when you recognize that every behavior has a reason, every behavior happens in a context and has meaning.
Yeah.
So the brain, however it's working, has done something.
Yeah.
But if we don't have a view of the child in our role, like we can be a carpenter and
Yeah.
say, you're not turning out the way I wanted it to. I had my plan and you're not doing it. So the consequence of that is you punish, you consequence. But if you're more like a gardener, you still tell the kid, don't F up like that again. You know, it's not, oh dear honey, I'm so sorry. I hope the police were nice to you. Well, not at all.
Yeah.
There is a consequence
Right.
that's happened.
Yeah.
You don't ignore the behavior, but you know that there's some reason going on the adolescent brain. And if my children don't see me with compassion, then they're not going to feel safe, significant, situated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I don't
yeah.
have compassion, sorry, Steve, just one other thought. If I don't have compassion for myself, it's very hard to reach out to others with empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
And so recognizing, one, the humanity, as Tim talked about, that I ain't alone in this. You know, the other parents do have things that they worry about teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gene, and then thanks, Tim. You know, I hear a lot of people say, well, I have to understand first and then I'll care. I think we've got it backwards. Compassion must go before understanding. Can't be the other way around, because if we wait to understand to show compassion, we'll be waiting a long time. And the other thing I want to say is, you know, this is just the first of many conversations. And, you know, when I think about, you know, mattering and meaning and manageability, the three great states, like it's just so critical. And I want to encourage people. We've got about 13 minutes left in our time together to put, if you have any questions, to put into the Q&A specifically about the three great states or examples or your experience, so you can put it into the Q&A. I want to move into, again, this is just a touch on, because the three great states are powerful. I think at the beginning of the conversation, you know, our good friend Sunshine Chen he said one time, if you don't got the three great states, you got nothing, right? And he was joking, and I was like, yeah, it's true. Because if you don't have the three great states, and Tim, you talk about self-compassion, Gene, you talk about it as well. I want to be very clear on something. It's just a perspective. Don't let not feeling that you love yourself be the reason you don't love others. I want to say that because I hear sometimes, right?
Three times. Say it 3 times. I want to hear it.
Yeah, don't let your you know, the worry that you don't care about yourself be the reason why you don't show care for others. Do not let that, because it's so critical. I hear that sometimes, well, I don't feel it myself, I can't show it. That's not true. We can create the three great states. It's important to love yourself, as Tim said. I love that perspective, Tim. But don't let it be an impediment to showing that you care to somebody else. And the other thing is, the other thing that is important to that is, you said it earlier, Gene. We all know when we don't feel safe. We all know when we don't feel significant. We all know when we're not clear on the direction and the roles and the expectations of situated. So it's critical to tune into, because if I don't feel the three great states internally, who can I go to, Tim, Gene, as you mentioned, your peeps, so that I can create that to fill up for myself, to be able to provide that for other people. And that's why the three great states are absolutely, they're profound. And I'm just going to roll into this, Tim and Gene. Tim, please share. Yeah, well, I hear that.
Yeah, they're deeply interconnected though too. And I'm looking here at Jody's comment about her son, and he's really struggling in all three of them. And with young people today, and Gene certainly spoke to this, the challenges of being young today, it's difficult to feel situated, to know what's expected, and to feel that sense of purpose, and to feel some optimism. And that can feed back on one's sense of safety and whether you matter. I mean, there's almost a a crisis at a group level to feel like we don't matter. Our whole cohort doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I hear what Jody's saying there, and I'll leave this, maybe throw it over to Jean to say, how do you see them bootstrapping each other? Because I know that Annette wants to hear more about situated as well.
Yeah, well, do you know, Tim, what comes to mind, one, is I think you're amazing that you can monitor the chat and still be present here, because I suck at multitasking. But so I want to underscore one of the things that you said, Steve, that there's a phrase of don't let the perfect be an enemy of the good. So make sure you're recognizing, even though you're not there in terms of working with kids, it's progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. And when I think of what you said, Steve, that you don't have to be the meditative sitting on the top of the dryer waiting for the other things you need. You don't need to be that. We can be flawed and repair.
Yeah.
And how do we repair? We ask, and I want you to say them, Steve. We ask what's important.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jean, please.
Well, do you know what? When you think about asking, having a relationship with somebody that you can ask them what's important to you, rather than saying, why'd you do that? You ask, what are your needs? What are your values? What are your goals? And what are you freaking good at? We're so good at picking up the negative, and less good at thinking about what are you good at, what matters to you. When have you been able to get to where you wanted?
Yeah, awesome.
And
Oma.
relationship, and connection is so important, and I'm dying for you to go into the next three.
I miss your F-bombs, and I miss your. I'm just getting teary there a bit. Like I just want to say, Jean and Tim, the fact that you guys joined me in this journey and helped verify and validate some of this stuff means the world to me. And hearing you speak, Jean, and you're absolutely right. Let's go to our kids. Let's go to our employees. Let's go to our partners and say, what do you need? What do you need to feel a little bit better? What's important to you? What are you hoping for? Like, what do you want? And I love that. Show me what you're good at. I'm going to look for what you're good at versus what you're not good at. That leads into the other parts of the algorithm. And I'm going to get to this part because I know, Jean, you're loving the 3 C's. Michael put something really great in the Q&A area. I want to honor it. I think asking for input in decisions helps with the significant area. I had a standing policy: if you can demonstrate that you have an improvement, we'll do it in your way. But how do you practically respond to bad input or bad suggestions without compromising perceived safety or significance? What a great question. And thank you. And that's what we do at Brivia. We do a lot of our programs around how do we teach leaders to create the 3 great states and all of these practical scenarios. First of all, way to go, Michael, for creating the space for people to be open and to be concerned about protecting their 3 great states, even in a situation that doesn't go well. And Jean, you say, I like that you, the perfect quote, I always say, we're not failing, we're flailing, right? That's what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out. And giving them the opportunity to share on improvements or on ideas is a great way to have people feel significant and to be situated. Now, if you get what is a bad idea, all ideas are great ideas, remember? It's just, is this one a fit? So always thank people. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for, and help them understand how it fits or doesn't fit. Nothing's a bad idea. I mean, we got to be honest, like, Tim, as a professor, you probably said that there's no such thing as bad questions. There's a few silly ones.
There's bad answers sometimes.
And some real bad answers. But Michael, I think doing what you can, just being mindful of that, is how can I deliver the feedback to this person in a way that respects their dignity, shows compassion, and demonstrates very clearly situated that this idea, thank you for it, doesn't fit at this time or in this particular way. Jean or Tim, anything on that great comment and question by Michael?
No, I'm glad
Well,
you noticed that he listens. Go ahead, Gene.
yeah, well, what comes to mind? What comes to mind as you describe this is two things. One is, rather than saying, what a freaking bad idea, your mind is a reflective one and starts to ask, where does this come from?
Yeah.
What's underneath?
Yeah.
When there is a bad idea, I think that you're running into a conflict between needs, values, goals, and strengths. I really do.
Yeah.
And so it's having that conversation outside of yourself or inside of yourself, depending on how reflective you are.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in the other's shoes. But the second concept is with boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
This ain't about kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy.
And it is kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy, and structure,
both
right?
and
both
and love it.
And as somebody asked in the question and answer, and I just want to put this up because I want to hear from you. We've got about 6 minutes left if we're lucky. Now, this is in the book, and this is also, I know Gene's a big fan, so I don't have as much time as I want to share, but one of the things that makes the three great states so profound, what you felt when you connected with your great experience, what you feel when you don't hold back, when you feel unstoppable, is that according to my perspective, it's just a perspective, of course, is that we have core essentials. These are not just needs according to the algorithm and the core approach. We have ontological human requirements from the second that we're born throughout our lives, and they are connection, to feel a strong sense of connection. We have a need, a requirement for clarity, which is that direction, predictability, anticipation, no surprises. And we also, as human beings, we have a strong need for a sense of control. Now, if people get negative, I mean a personal sense of agency, that we feel that we have the ability to influence one or more aspects of a situation or thing. So, and control, if you're not a fan of control, you can replace it with confidence. If you don't. So I'm going to ask Jean and Tim. I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about, but any thoughts on this idea that, and the way it works is that when we show the three great states, when we behave in a way that creates safety, we give that sense of personal agency. We create a sense of confidence for that person. When we keep people situated, let them know of their roles and responsibilities, expectations, what to expect, no surprises, having an agenda at the meeting, we are feeding, fueling, and fulfilling that requirement for clarity. And when we relationship, Gene, when we relate, when we love, when we show that we matter, when we stay connected and we strengthen the bond, we are feeding, fueling, and fulfilling our ontological requirement for connection. And that's what makes the three great states so profound. Mm-hmm. Tim, Jean, any thoughts on this?
Well, let me just say quickly, because I want to hear from Tim. Let me say that there is research evidence for this actual lack of connection. And it's the Harvard study of adult development and growth, where they started looking at health to see what is it that people do that makes them healthy, and what is it that makes them not so healthy. And what did they find? Loneliness was the best predictor. That lack of connection was the best predictor of poor health. And they actually said that loneliness is as big, lack of connection is as big a health risk as smoking and obesity. Wow. We're wired to connect.
Wow.
To seek clarity and have confidence and control. Anyway, over to Tim.
Thank you, Jean.
Well, yeah, we're getting really close to the end here. So I just wanted to drill down just one little step and to say that you complimented Michael on, making room to listen to what people had to say. And I think we can never emphasize enough that listening is foundational to all three of the great states.
Yeah. Yes.
That
yes.
and too often we're not comfortable enough with
Yeah.
silence to really listen. So there's some making space for the other, quite
Yeah.
physically, and not interrupting,
Yeah.
and being uncomfortable with silence for a while
Yeah.
can really let the other answer the question when you ask them what their needs are.
Yeah.
That'll put people back on their heels. It might be the
Yeah.
first time they've ever asked, and then they think, I don't know what my needs are. But if you start to talk again, you're never going to hear them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just want to focus on that really important thing. Where we give our attention is a form of love, right?
Yeah.
We talked a
Yeah.
lot about loving. If you
Yeah.
don't know how to give attention and listen, you don't know how to love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. And Tim, you made a great point. Part of the curriculums that we promote is the reason why listening is so profound is because it does just that. It reinforces and strengthens all three great states. That's why someone goes, I don't know what I did. I just listened. Yeah, you did the one thing humans need most, because when we feel listened to, we feel seen. And when we feel seen, we feel safe. And thank you, Jim. It's called you Jim again, combining Tim and Jean. So everybody, thanks for being here. I know, Tim, do you have a couple minutes if we go over? Jean, are you okay if we go?
Yeah.
I don't want to. I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I want to say that this is the beginning of sharing the core algorithm, the three great states, the core four, the key connectors, and the core essentials. And thanks, Tim and Jean and Brenda Badjuk from behind the scenes and all the core council members for helping. There's lots more to come. If you found this helpful, you're going to get the recording. To find more out about Timothy Pychyl, man, his work is, as Jean says, freaking incredible. You can find it at procrastination.ca. His book is amazing. Check out the Sam Harris Waking Up app, because the Tim's pieces are incredible. And as I said earlier, Jean wrote an incredible book. You can find out more about her at drjeanclinton.com. And oh my gosh, this book is so incredible. It's one of the only perspectives I actually incorporate into the book because it's so profound. And I want to say you can take the picture of the QR code to find it. If you're interested, and the recording will have it, so you can even pause it and take it then. And if you're interested in learning more about the algorithm, the Getting to Better book I'm working really hard at having it ready for the fall. Thank you, Tim and Jean and everybody for helping out with that. And Melissa Wilson from Networlding. And the getting to it. So if you want to keep up on what this algorithm is and how it can improve your lives and the lives of the people that you care about, you can go to gettingtobetter.com. And if you are wanting to stay in touch with Brivia, because one of the things I can finally say that makes most of our curriculums awesome is we have an algorithm and we use it. And it's incredible. And so if you want to stay in touch, join the Getting to Better newsletter. I hope, Tim and Jean, in the future, you might be open to coming back sometime and talking about some of those other things that we skirted around. Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Oh my goodness. I just
Any
will do anything that you want. And I think absolutely,
any
Steve. It's
okay,
so
any final thoughts, Tim and Jean, before we go today?
well, I think that this has been a really powerful experience for me, Steve and Tim. You've asked, and from the chat, the ask of how do we get deep on this? How do we apply it to different situations? Points to the fact that people are getting it.
Okay.
That you, in doing this, have made Tim and I feel something that's called the three great states. We feel safe, significant, and situated. And I think other people from this will understand and move forward and reflect on it. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
many words for our final thought. Sorry.
Thank you, Jean. No, don't not say sorry. It's a no apology zone. Thank you, Tim. Over to you for any final words.
Yeah, I'll go back to my opening comments when you asked, think of a situation. I talked about teaching and I used the word engagement. I didn't always feel safe going into my classroom and sitting next to people I didn't know. I have to scroll back here and see who wrote it about mindfulness meditation as a root here. And I thought, it's another piece that we need to talk about. Nurturing the brain through mindfulness practice also helps. This is what
Beautiful.
Sue said. Yeah. And I was thinking it's so true, and there's many other things in there as well in terms of letting go of self and not being so focused on oneself, so that you can see the other, because that's foundational too. You know, my sense of safety comes often from letting go of my fears and insecurities and willingness to be vulnerable. And
Wow.
then when I'm willing to be vulnerable, I can listen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd end with that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you, Brenda Badjuk, for your help and being part of the team, and Tim and Jean and everyone that showed up. There are no words to thank you for all the help you've shown me, the generosity and the support to bring this beautiful beast of an algorithm to the public to share with everybody to improve the lives for themselves, but most importantly, for the people that they care about. And if we create the 3 great states, and this is the one thing I didn't get to say earlier, don't worry about the world. Don't worry about the 10,000 person hospital. Don't worry about the 450 people school. Just dial it back to the immediate environment that you're responsible for in your home, in your office. Create a cocoon. And if we're all doing that everywhere, we will have a tectonic shift of releasing and elevating human potential. So I wish you the best on your journey of getting to better. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, better than expected day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Bye
Tim.
now.
Thanks, Jean.